Hey guys, it's Jeremy with Career Lab, the channel where we interview successful people and we ask them about their story and career advice. Today I spoke with Shawn Rakidzich from Airbnb Automated. And if you're not familiar with Airbnb Automated, it's a YouTube channel where Shawn teaches people how to build a business on top of Airbnb. And he currently has 40 properties online on Airbnb, and he's bringing in over $100,000 in revenue every month. And that's not even his main business, that's his side business. His main business is a marketing agency where he helps newspapers to sell more newspapers, and he helps them come online in the digital era. There's a couple of good takeaways and stories in this conversation. Shawn talks about being very introverted before going to college and then dropping out of college and going taking a sales job as his first job out of college, and how that really helped make him a more charismatic person and make him a more just extroverted person. We talk about how he was homeless and how he built a business while homeless, and how he overcame that challenge. And a really cool thing we talk about is if you're interested in starting a small business, we talk about how to find opportunities and how to get in the general direction of starting your own business if you're still in college or recently graduated. If you like the conversation, make sure to subscribe. I have some cool interviews coming up. One of them is with James Freeman, the founder of Blue Bottle Coffee. So I'm really excited about that one. And I really hope you enjoy this conversation. Let me know what you think in the comments, and let's get started. All right, welcome to the show, Shawn. It's great to have you on. You've lived a really interesting life up to now. You've had your fair share of challenges. You started off in sales. You were homeless at some point. You started multiple businesses. Some failed and some worked out. Your main thing right now is Airbnb. I think you have. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you have around 40 properties now.
Yep, that's right.
Which is, crazy if you think about it. And we'll go more into detail about that later. But I want to start kind of in the early days when you were still in college. I think you went to the University of Wisconsin, studied music, marketing, psychology, and I kind of want to get an idea of what Shawn was like back then.
Sure.
First of all, I want to know you were there for 3 years, I think, right? So I want to know first of all if you graduated early or if you dropped out.
Dropped out.
Dropped out. Okay.
So dropped out of college. Dropped out of music school.
All right.
So it might actually start a little bit before college. So I grew up really poor in a town called Delavan, Wisconsin. Okay. And so we didn't really have much, single parent home kind of thing. And I was not at all popular. That's probably the reason why I got into music. I could sit in my room and play my guitar a lot. And that's really where it all started. Okay. I had a mentor in high school that was a small business owner, and I think he kind of influenced that part of me. And then my choir teacher was the other kind of like male figure in my life that had a high amount of influence. He introduced music theory to me, which got me in love with songwriting, which then put me in music school. And I went to University of Wisconsin Parkside, which is about an hour away from home. The professor, James Crowley, had won some big awards in contemporary music. So it was a good choice for the theory side of music school. And yes, I ended up dropping out of school. I was naive back then. I guess that was kind of it. So as I got into college, I started to finally catch my sense of identity. I got a little freedom from the whole, I didn't think I was good enough part of me. And that was a big player in who I was as I was raised as a kid. I just never thought I was good enough to kind of be in any crowd whatsoever. But starting fresh in college where nobody knows you, you eventually go, hey, people like me. This is cool. So started to develop my identity, but didn't take my school very responsibly because I was just so happy to have friends. So first semester, I crushed it. Second semester, I got distracted. And, I guess I needed to find my place still. So dropped out of music school. I ended up in a full-time sales position almost immediately after, and I really clicked with that company, and that's, I guess, what started my professional career into sales and then sales management before I moved to Texas in 2008.
Were you more of an introvert before and shy, reserved kid?
Absolutely was.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was the sales position that really started to really pull extroversion out of me. So I was able to kind of have both, and I wouldn't say that I'm an ambivert, like I don't embody both at the same time, but I definitely know what it's like to be on both sides of the fence, and I can change hats if I have to.
It's very interesting because, I mean, a lot of the people I know in sales, they just seem naturally charismatic. And I mean, you appear from your videos, no one could ever tell that you're once a shy, timid kid, right?
Yeah, right.
So yeah. So what
So there's an
exactly?
advantage. I'm going to say there's actually an advantage to being an introvert when getting into sales. There's a book that I read called The Art of the Sale. It was written by a guy who's bad at sales.
Hmm.
So it's a cool book to read. He's like, hey, I'm not trying to hate on sales. I just wasn't good at it. And I wanted to find out why. So he did his research and tried to figure out what makes a salesperson great. And he mapped out what he believes to be like the two major hemispheres of the sale. And the beginning of it is whenever you're opening a sale or starting a relationship, that's an empathy driven part of the sale. So people who are introverts can kind of understand customers a little bit more, right? They're not ego driven as much. They can connect with people. They remember things that people say more. They care more about what people say. So
Yeah.
the empathy on the front end is important for building the front end of the sale. You then, of course, go into your presentation or the logical part of any sale, which is a very small sliver, is one thing he's trying to communicate in the book is that most of a sale is emotional and only your presentation is logical, just a bit. And then the final half of the sale is ego, right? So the ego drives the sale down. The I will achieve this, I will close this deal, I will make this commission, whatever that cause is that you have for selling. So the introvert has a lot better time adopting the front end. And a lot of natural salespeople, they either are highly empathetic or they're just these ego driven like sales monsters that just power close people. And we've seen those hyper aggressive types that are like, I can sell anybody anything. I don't care about the customer. And that's the darker side of sales. So you have to embody both.
So why did you pick sales when you were in college, and why did you drop out from it?
My
Um,
drummer talked me into the sales.
okay.
So I was in a screamo band actually.
Oh
So
wow.
yeah, his favorite band at the time was Early in November. My favorite was probably like Early Finch. There's a song called What It Is to Burn that I really liked.
Okay.
And we started the screamo band. And he's like, I work for this company. It's really cool. You should do it. He got me into it. I didn't think I'd be good at sales. And everybody tried to talk me out of it, of course, trying to warn me that it was a bad path. And I went with it anyway because I was just so excitable. I was so easily excited back then. And I think that naivety that I had was part of what made me a good salesperson because I could really buy in to the BS that my sales manager was giving me. He made me believe I could, and I actually believed him. So I did.
Interesting. And were you going into sales like thinking you were going to come back to college, or were you like, screw college, like I don't need it anymore?
So I've always thought that I was going to retire early and write music for the rest of my life. That's
Okay.
something that kind of was in the beginning of it all. It's modified a little bit lately because my real estate agent's like, bro, you can retire now and just travel the world, full time because I've automated my companies. He's like, you don't need to do anything. So, but now that I'm here, I still want to create. And it's not just music that I want to create. That's a theme though, is creation. I have this desire to create things and I love creating businesses. So I still want to write music, but I want to start more companies. It's what I want to do. So college is definitely no longer valid. Like the amount of downtime you'd have to spend going back to learn a lot of redundant stuff that you can learn in books you read on your own. There's a lot that I've already covered. And so college would just be a waste of time, paper time consideration. It's
Yeah.
not worth. It's not worth it.
Yeah. Okay. And so when you were in sales, I think you were at the company for 2 years, right? Um,
A little over. So I was their top sales rep for my first year. They
okay.
moved me to sales management immediately after, and I was a sales manager with them for about a year and a half, and then left the company. And that's when I went homeless. Was 2009. So I started early 2007, worked with them until late 2009, went homeless trying to start my own company, ended
Okay.
up working with them again like turn of 2010 and worked with them until the summer of 2010, and then I started my own company again, and that was the one that connected. So 2007 through 2010 with a I guess 4 to 6 month break in the middle.
So when you were in that sales position, what was your mindset? Were you in the mindset of, oh, I'm gonna make as much money as I can so I can retire later, or was that I really want to work on the sales craft? What I mean, what drove you to become the best sales rep at the company?
So there's a few variables. I became the top sales rep right away, which was more so because of my excitement to finally be good at something and to get praise. I needed it so bad. I wanted people to tell me that I was good enough, or I wanted people to tell me that I'm awesome.
Yeah.
And I remember as a kid, my whole life, I was always trying to tell people cool stories. I wanted people to like be excited with me whenever I told a story. That whole, and then I found $5 thing. That happened to me a lot. People didn't like care too much about my stories that I wanted to tell. So being able to be a salesperson, storytelling is a huge part of sales presentations. So I got a chance to meet a lot of people because there's a high volume sale, and I just loved it. I just loved the volume of people I got to connect with, and being in the format where they were prepared to listen, and I was able to get really good at my presentation, which is kind of music performance, sales script. It all just kind of fit together, and I just hit the top of the sales team in my little market. Like week number 2, I was the top rep, and then week number 3, I was the top rep in the company, and I had no like inclination that I had no clue that my third check was going to be over $2,000, that when I was the top rep in the company. So I was still outperforming everybody, and money wasn't there yet. It wasn't about the money because I had just got my first paycheck the week that I finished as the top rep in the company because of their sales cycle. So money wasn't the carrot for me at that point. I loved getting good at it, and I love getting good at anything. That's probably a disposition I have. And then everybody's like, wow, you're so good.
Yeah.
And that part of that affirmation that I got from the tribe I was in was all the fuel I ever needed. So I was in a unique disposition to be good at sales because I was kind of starved for praise.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
That would definitely do it. And I think you mentioned in one of the videos that you left because the company screwed you over somehow. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, small companies don't necessarily do business the right way all the time, and it wasn't my boss's fault necessarily, but he put his family in the company, and his brother put him in a hard situation where he pretty much had to, do right by him or right by me, and he of course chose family, and I took it really hard. So and thus I left my company.
And at that point, I think you were like, I never want to work for someone again, right?
Yeah, I was broken at that point. I loved being in sales, the independent contractor thing, and I just loved the lifestyle. And I could not go back to work for a wage. And that was the big thing. Could not go back to work for a wage. I tried to find another full commission job, but I just didn't find anything I connected with. So I was done. I had to go on my own.
So the next company, it was called Just Smile, right? That was the one that didn't work out.
You've done some really good homework. Yeah, so that did not start as my company. So Just Smile was a company that I did marketing for. That's when I first started my first business before I went homeless. And they were there was a couple that owned this Botox center, and they would like show up at salons and do people's Botox. So when I was having a meeting between them and the owner of one salon trying to help them close this deal, I realized that there's a better way to do more volume but charge a similar price for this teeth whitening treatment that they also offered as a side service aside from their Botox. So I then had a private meeting with my client, the Houston Botox Center, and said, we can do these teeth whitenings, but we can do them like in the field. We can go and find people where they're consuming already and sell them kits. Basically, we take professional whitening systems and we teach them how to do it at home, and we sell those. So a few iterations of sales script building and presentation building, we had this model where we gave people professional teeth whitening systems, and instead of sitting them in a chair and doing it like that, we just gave them the kit, taught them how to use it, and send them home. So we could do a lot more volume with similar margin. That guy was going through a divorce with his wife and co-business owner, so they actually bounced a few checks and sent my bank account negative.
Oh, wow.
So in trade, I took the inventory they had given me, and I took the rights to the name, and I started the company on my own, started buying my own supplies from China. And so it became my company because they defaulted on payment. But then eventually, since I had no clue how customs worked, customs found out I was shipping stuff in without paying taxes or whatever I'm supposed to do. I clear my shipments, international customs, and they just held my product. And I was living paycheck to paycheck at the time, living off my margin. It was a real small business. And then when my product didn't show up, there was nothing left to sell. And that's what sent me homeless, is I didn't consider a risk that was apparent, but I didn't know any better, right? I was still just a sales guy trying to be a business owner. I went back to the company that I was working for before,
Okay.
trying to negotiate a deal with them where I could get the position that I had before they kind of took a position away of mine because of the whole family thing.
Yeah.
I was doing really well, so I wanted that position back. Wasn't thinking about starting another business. I was thinking about just getting this position that I had back. And so I negotiated a deal with them. They said, if you hit X performance metrics, we'll allow you to have the position back. And I did it like in 3 weeks. Then they did not give me what they promised.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they screwed up again. So at that point was when while being homeless in between that time, after the teeth whitening company and going back with them, I had called around and played with the idea of starting a company just like the one I worked for, this marketing company. And so while I was working for them, kind of like begrudgingly working because I was obviously not happy. They didn't give me the position I asked for, or they didn't give me the territory that I asked for, and all that good stuff. I got a phone call from a newspaper, said, "Hey, would you like to come and take our contract?" So I was able to essentially, instead of being a subcontractor working for this company, I became the direct contract for a smaller newspaper, and then started my agency. And that was 2010.
That makes sense. And in between, when you were homeless, were you sleeping in your car, or what? Like what? How did that look like?
I had a Mazda MPV van.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're just sleeping in the trunk in the back.
Yeah, I did sleep in the back of my van for a while. I would stay with friends. I got a girlfriend in the meantime. Ended up living with her for a bit. That kind of whole lifestyle. Definitely nomadic and had no home.
Yeah. Well, it's probably an interesting experience.
Yeah, I had a $25 a day budget that I put myself on when I was homeless. So my Chase account was negative, like $4,000 or $5,000 from when this one guy, kind of screwed me over. And I worked out a deal with my buddy from college, who I mentioned in my last video, Nathan, because I couldn't get merchant services. I couldn't charge credit cards. My account was negative. So he set up a merchant services so I could charge credit cards. All the money he transferred to me for my credit card payments went to pay off my negative balance at the bank. And I had 2 accounts, so I'd write a check from one account to the other to transfer the negative balance.
Okay.
Because Chase will shut your bank account down if you're negative for more than 60 days. So I would just transfer the negative balance from one to the other so I could float and not have my accounts go negative. And so the credit card payments for my friend went to cover some of the negative balance, and I was living off of the cash sales. So I was selling these little teeth whitening kits for cash and living off of that. So I had to collect cash to eat, but then of course I was collecting checks and credit cards in order to of course pay off my debt. And that's what I was juggling in order to get out of homelessness, because I couldn't, basically without a bank account, right? There's a lot that you cannot do. Yeah. And my bank accounts were dead until I paid off my balance. So that's how that homeless era went. And it worked out. I ended up getting out of debt shortly before starting to work for that company again. And that same bank account is one of the same bank accounts I have in my wallet right now. It still says "Just Smile" on the business bank account.
It's probably a good reminder.
Yeah, that I'm going to keep that account with that DBA forever. Just remind myself where I was.
That's awesome. And so now you're working on this. Basically, it's marketing for. You're doing marketing for publications, right? For newspapers and stuff. For
print media mostly.
And how? So the business is still operating. How long did you work on it until you were on to the next thing? And was the purpose with that business solely to kind of bring an income, and then you had something else in mind, or what was your mindset then?
My head is still squarely in that business, actually. Okay. So it's still operating. It's still healthy. I just hired a regional sales director to run that company, because I'm splitting my weight between businesses, and I can't give anything 100%. So I had to hire somebody to be like my right-hand man.
All right.
I did not have another business until I started another a la carte marketing company in 2014, which made a little bit of money, but never really took off. So kind of let that go to the side. And then my first Airbnb property I picked up by accident in 2014, maybe 2015. Mm-hmm. So it's been maybe 4 years that I've been in the Airbnb space.
Okay.
And so the media company that I have, newspapers are needing to go digital more now too. So there's more than just the service that we originally provided,
Yeah.
but a lot of this, we're trying to differentiate the space now and provide them solutions for their digital transformation. So my head is still squarely in that business. So Airbnb is actually a side business for me. It's not my, as you would say, main business.
At what point did you start trying to automate your businesses? I think you read like the 4 Hour Work Week, and you recommend the E-Myth Revisited as well.
E-Myth Mastery is the one I recommend most.
E-Myth Mastery, okay.
Yeah,
that's at what point did you read those? Was that before you started the publication business or after?
That was back during the homeless period of my life. I read a lot of stuff because I was like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I be successful again? So I read tons of books. Other favorite books were the Leadership Pipeline, great book. Brain Steering was another good book too.
Okay.
Of course, I read How to Win Friends and Influence People. That was cool. There's one called Biology, B-U-I.
Okay.
Ology, that was a great book. Love that one. The Five Dysfunctions of a Team was a good one also.
Oh, yeah.
Or 48 Laws of Power. You know, there's a run of books that I highly recommend for. It depends on really what part of the evolutionary phase in business you're in, right?
Yeah.
There's different books for every phase. So I have tons, and somebody says, hey, I've got this problem, and I'll just throw a book title at it. So I gave my neighbor a copy of this book called More Important Than Money. I gave it to him yesterday. It's about how entrepreneurs need teams more than they actually need the funding that they're seeking. So
actually, that's a good point that you recommend books for questions. So I mean, my audience is mostly people that are kind of about to graduate college or just graduated, and they're not really sure what to do in life, right? Maybe they have an idea, but it's like there's this doubt, like, is this really what I'm meant to do? Like, what's my best work and stuff? I mean, do you have any books for that? And then what's your personal take on that as well?
So there's a book called Strength Finder, which is a really good book. I'm sure you've heard that book.
Yeah.
That's a good one. And How to Win Friends and Influence People is a good basic book that people should start with because it really teaches you kind of how other people work. So those are two books because you're going to have to work through people to get what you want, right? That's why that How to Win Friends book is important. Strength Finder helps you kind of figure out at the core where you are, you know, and try to develop that sense of where your assets are because your skills or talents are your assets. Right. And sometimes you don't think about what could be valuable. You just take a lot of parts of who you are for granted. So that's where I would start. But if you think you want to be in business, but you don't know what business you want to be in, I would just start listening to business content like the Harvard iLabs YouTube channel. Stanford Graduate School of Business is a great YouTube channel too for business. The cinematographer that I met with for our Airbnb course that we're going to be working on, he showed me an NPR podcast called How I Made This or How I Made It or How I Built This.
Yes, I've heard of it. Yeah,
that one. So as I was explaining to a girl, she pitched me this idea that she has for an on-demand software. And she's got a master's degree working on her PhD, but she's never been a business owner. So she's just a ball of nerves. But she's hit a higher level of achievement academically than most people would. So you think about, well, who's going to be qualified to start a business? Well, this girl is an achiever. You think she'd be able to do it. But most people shoot themselves in the foot by thinking that they're incapable because they know that there's a lot out there that they don't know. And everybody's afraid of losing, right? People only really want to battle on familiar territory. And that's one thing that people need to learn to get past. So I told her listen to business content. Just get your mind in business mode, right? And your brain will start thinking more like a business person, and eventually things will just start making more sense, and it won't be so scary. So we spend too much time in the academic world and not enough time in this risk-taking entrepreneurial environment.
Do you find that for you, the opportunities just kind of arose in your life, and then you spotted them, and you were like, "This is a good opportunity," or how did that? I know that the sales business the publication business stemmed out of the previous job you were at, right? So maybe that's a path where you can get a job in an industry that kind of interests you or a field that kind of interests you, and then that can lead you somewhere. But then the Airbnb just came about, right? So how, like in general, how did your ideas start?
Yeah, so how does business happen, right? How do you
Yeah.
start a business or decide what to start? Well, the Census Bureau published that 85% of LLCs or new companies are formed in either direct competition with a company that the owner worked at or in direct service to a company like the one that the owner worked at, right? So familiarity there is a big theme. So go with what you know,
Okay.
right? Um, the Airbnb business was a total accident because I moved in as sales manager from Michigan, and as part of this relocation package, I gave him a place to stay. So I signed this year-long lease so that way he could move there. He then, after a couple months, moved into his own unit because he wanted to buy his own furniture with his girlfriend, so they got their own space. So in the same building, I had my apartment, an empty one, and then he had one with his girlfriend, but he moved out shortly after because he had to go back to Michigan. So I decided to do him a favor and pick up his lease. So I've got 3 leases. I'm only living in one, and I've got to pay the rent for the year on these other 2 leases. I'm like, what am I going to do? So necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah.
And that's why Airbnb showed up.
Interesting. Yeah, and that's a year where you really crushed it and established the business, right?
Yeah. So it's February 2017 was at 10. February 2018, I was probably at like 24, 25. And now it's July 2018, which is 6 months later-ish, and I'm at 40. And we're now taking on other people's properties too and automating theirs. So we've got like an external portfolio also. Yeah.
That's great, man. It's great news. And I mean, and the channel, you're getting a lot of attention. It's exciting to see the channel grow. I mean, when I first followed you, I think you were, I don't know, somewhere around like 8,000. Now you're at 12,000, around there, right?
Yeah, we're at 12,500. And it's cool because this channel isn't like a channel just for everybody. It's not where you like watch your favorite music videos, or it's not some Grant Cardone or Gary Vaynerchuk motivational thing where you just get some abstract motivation from it. This is how to take your property and run a business from it. So it's a very nuanced group of people. You're either a property owner, or you're thinking about being a property owner, or you for some reason love Airbnb and want to be an Airbnb business owner. So it's a much smaller pond. So I feel so happy to have even that many subscribers and such what I consider to be such a small pool of qualified viewers.
Yeah, man. And you're definitely, I mean, you're making an impact. You can see if you read the comments, it's probably very fulfilling.
I love it. I love it so much.
Yeah. Do you have a big vision, or is it just you have a general direction and you're taking it one step at a time?
So my vision is to create what I would call an idea factory. And it's got a few, and I'll tell you all right now, right? If you guys take this from me, whatever. So phase 1 of an idea factory in my mind is you have a group of creatives, right? A bunch of people who are like, what if the world was this way? Or what if we did this, right? And then those people just spitball a high volume of ideas. Add another team of smart, like pragmatic people that sift through the ideas and try to vet them and decide if they're good or not. Once those ideas are vetted and we decide that the cream of the crop are like this curated group of ideas, we take those to a team that then sets up the teams that are going to launch it, obtains the funding for them. Pretty much this branded approach where we've got a set of investors that love all of our businesses because they have an above average clearance rate, right? Where venture capitalists like expect 1 out of 10 of their businesses they invest into succeed. If we can break it, and if like 30% or 40% of our businesses are profitable, people will be begging to invest money, right? So this idea of factory model is to have branded businesses, right? This came from this group, and that means it's 30% likely to succeed as opposed to 10, and it just makes it easier to get investments, and you just start spinning ideas into the world, and investors are just handing you cash to start it, and that's kind of what I want long term.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
It would be wicked fun because I'm that what if guy. I'm like, hey, let's do this.
Yeah.
And I just want to kick it to people and see what happens.
Yeah. A lot of time you just don't have time, but if you have a big team, you can just outsource a lot of it.
Yeah. Well, and the making the team is the biggest one. Like Jack Ma, from the founder of Alibaba, talks about teams, and that's the reason why he's successful. He's like, I'm not special, but I could build a team, and that's what I did. I got the best people to work together. So you will start alone, which is okay, but you need to learn to delegate out things that you're not good at. Delegation has been my weak point for a long time, but I'm finally, because I'm respecting it from hard lessons, I'm finally learning to delegate effectively.
Great. the last thing I want to talk about is, because we didn't really talk about it much, but your Airbnb business. You have 40-ish properties,
Yep.
and you're bringing in about what, like $200,000 per month, I think, maybe a little less.
Little over 100,000 a month.
A little over 100,000. Okay.
Yeah, because I specialize in small studios, like in studios where my rent is low, so I can really rack up the money. Now, all of my money doesn't just come from Airbnb because I do direct bookings too. But my Airbnb platform, we're clearing a little over 100,000 a month.
I mean, that's crazy.
From just the Airbnb platform.
And your profit margin, if you don't mind sharing that?
Probably roughly 50%.
50%. That's
Yeah,
really good.
Yeah.
And so right now you have this YouTube channel. I think people can go find it at Airbnb Automated, right?
Airbnb Automated, yeah.
I mean, for anyone that just has a little bit of startup capital, I mean, you're saying in your videos you need what, about like 7,000 just to start your first property?
Yeah, 7,000 is a responsible number. First month's rent, cost of build out. Yep, it's about right.
Yeah, Shawn explains everything in his videos, how to convince landlords to sublease on Airbnb. And I mean, the beauty of the business model you're doing is that since you're renting properties, as soon as you have another 7,000 to invest, you can get your second property and your third property, and soon enough you end up with 40 properties in 2 years, right?
Yeah, that's right. So you'll get a return on investment, like you get all of your money back and have your 7,000 back in your hand.
Yeah.
Probably your fifth month. So that there's an exponential snowball effect if you don't eat your profit, right? If you cannot eat your profit, you can totally spin up a good business pretty quick.
It sounds almost too good to be true.
Yeah, right. Well, you have to not spend your profit for it to work, because if you think about it, you have $7,000 in 4 months ish, right, off your property. If you're trying to live off of that money, you can't grow the business. You just got your 7,000 back, and you can start eating some, your profit, but you have to have the discipline to reinvest.
But I mean, for anyone that's in a job, it seems like a perfect side hustle. So you don't have to be too involved, and there's potential to make great money. And if you're interested in becoming financially stable, and if you want to start more businesses like you eventually, seems like a great business. And I'm gonna email you later. I would love to get a bunch of book recommendations from you. You mentioned before that you have different book recommendations for different stages of business. So I'll come up with a bunch of stages, and then I'll share those in the description.
Sounds good to me.
Thanks so much for your time, man. Really appreciate it. Where can people find you?
Where can people find me?
Yeah.
Well, if they don't go to the Airbnb Automated YouTube channel, my Facebook page for it is facebook.com/Airbnb Automated. I have an Instagram account for it, and then I've got a personal Instagram and a personal YouTube page that I'm working on as well. So my personal YouTube page is actually still from when I was going to do a solo thing after my Screamo band. So my tag is Charmer Band.
Okay.
I was trying to start a solo act called Charmer, so that's my personal YouTube. I'll be putting more sales management, sales training stuff there, and general entrepreneurship stuff on my personal, and then of course things that fit with my Airbnb audience on my Airbnb YouTube channel.
Great. All right, Shawn. Well, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. And good luck with everything.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good one. Bye.
See you guys.